Hello everyone, this is R.S. Miller at the endtimenews.org and today is May 29th, 2014. A convoy of Russian troops entered Ukraine as military operations intensify. According to the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry, at around 3:30 a.m. Kiev time on Tuesday, the Ukrainian border guards spotted a convoy of several trucks, cars, and minibuses that were moving from the direction of Russia towards the state border of Ukraine. At 3:40 a.m., the convoy crossed the state border, where it encountered armed resistance on the part of the border guard unit. As a result of the armed clash, the border guards seriously injured one person and damaged and seized one minibus and two cars. The seized vehicles were filled with Kalashnikov rifles, handheld grenade launchers, and explosives. Although the Foreign Ministry statement did not mention whether or not any of the convoy managed to get through, a video surfaced on YouTube purportedly showing Russian military trucks filled with heavily armed men crossing into an area of eastern Ukraine controlled by the local militias. The armed men were dressed in unmarked uniforms and flying Russian flags from the military trucks. The convoy was also accompanied by as many as a dozen minivans, presumably filled with men and military equipment. Another report states that 45 people were killed in the Donetsk region and 43 were hospitalized with gunshots and shrapnel wounds. An official stated that of the 43 wounded, 8 were positively identified as being residents of Russia, with another 8 coming from Russian-annexed Crimea. As the battle to retake eastern regions of Ukraine intensifies, so is the likelihood of increased Russian troop involvement. In this latest convoy, there were at least 3 Russian military trucks transporting uniformed men carrying Russian military hardware. If Moscow did not approve of this incursion into Ukraine, then they would have been stopped on the Russian side of the border. The fact is that if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, well, you get the idea. Meanwhile, it's being reported that the Ukrainian government has launched a large-scale military offensive in the Slavyansk and Kramatorsk areas. The operation is said to involve the use of combat aircraft and artillery, according to witnesses. On Monday, the newly elected president of Ukraine, Petro Poroshenko, ordered the military to retake the Donetsk airport, which had been seized by pro-Russian militias. Before the assault began, a Ukraine fighter jet fired multiple warning shots in the hopes that the rebels would lay down their arms and surrender. Afterwards, another fighter jet bombed the rebel-held positions, according to a government spokesperson. Additionally, it's being reported that an anti-aircraft weapons system was also destroyed in the operation. Witnesses reported hearing large explosions, gunfire, and seeing plumes of smoke coming from the airport. Several fighter jets and attack helicopters were also seen flying over the airport. Another report states that since Monday, 2 Ukrainian helicopters were shot down by pro-Russian rebels. It is also being reported that a Ukrainian general was killed in the second helicopter downing, along with 14 soldiers. The crisis in Ukraine appears to be escalating to a point from which there may be little or no alternative except war with Russia. Moscow's annexation of Crimea, the verification of Russian citizens, troops, and military hardware involved in the insurgency in eastern Ukraine, the new president-elect Poroshenko vowing to get back Crimea from Russia as well as retaking control of eastern portions of the country may all indicate that the worst is yet to come. However, President Obama views the partially successful Ukraine election as a major achievement, and all without firing a single shot.
In Ukraine, Russia's recent actions recall the days when Soviet tanks rolled into Eastern Europe. But this isn't the Cold War. Our ability to shape world opinion helped isolate Russia right away. Because of American leadership, the world immediately condemned Russian actions. Europe and the G7 joined us to impose sanctions. NATO reinforced our commitment to Eastern European allies. The IMF is helping to stabilize Ukraine's economy. OSCE monitors brought the eyes of the world to unstable parts of Ukraine. And this mobilization of world opinion and international institutions served as a counterweight to Russian propaganda and Russian troops on the border and armed militias in ski masks. This weekend, Ukrainians voted by the millions. Yesterday, I spoke to their next president. We don't know how the situation will play out, and there will remain grave challenges ahead, but standing with our allies on behalf of international order, working with international institutions, has given a chance for the Ukrainian people to choose their future without us firing a shot.
I called the Ukraine election partially successful due to the fact that most of the residents in the rebel-controlled areas were prevented from casting a vote under the threat of force. Many of the voting stations were taken over by armed men who destroyed the ballot boxes. Additionally, residents had previously been warned to remain in their homes over a several-day period during the election weekend. Yes, the election is in fact a significant step, but this crisis is far from being over. The Department of State warns U.S. citizens against all travel to Libya and recommends that U.S. citizens currently in Libya depart immediately. Due to security concerns, the Department of State has limited staffing at its embassy in Tripoli and is only able to offer very limited emergency service to U.S. citizens in Libya. This travel warning supersedes the travel warning issued in December of 2013. The alert goes on to say, the security situation in Libya remains unpredictable and unstable. The Libyan government has not been able to adequately build its military and police forces and improve security following the 2011 revolution. Many military-grade weapons remain in the hands of private individuals, including anti-aircraft weapons that may be used against civilian aviation. Crime levels remain high in many parts of the country. In addition to the threat of crime, various groups have called for attacks against U.S. citizens and the U.S. interest in Libya. Extremist groups in Libya have made several specific threats this year against U.S. government officials, citizens, and interest in Libya. Because of the presumption that foreigners, especially U.S. citizens in Libya, may be associated with the U.S. government or U.S. NGOs, travelers should be aware that they may be targeted for kidnapping, violent attacks, or death. U.S. citizens currently in Libya should exercise extreme caution and depart immediately. Sporadic episodes of civil unrest have occurred throughout the country, and attacks by armed groups can occur in many different areas. Hotels frequented by Westerners have been caught in the crossfire. Checkpoints controlled by militias are common outside of Tripoli and at times inside the capital. Closures or threats of closures of international airports occur regularly, whether for maintenance, labor, or security-related incidents. The status of the country's interim government and the General National Congress both remain uncertain. Heavy clashes between rival factions erupted in May of 2014 in Benghazi and other eastern cities. In Tripoli, armed groups attacked the General National Congress on May 18th as part of a campaign to influence and intimidate institutions of government. Heavy fighting flared for a day, resulting in deaths and injury, followed by tense posturing between rival militia groups. This posturing has the potential to continue and reignite fighting at any time. State security institutions lack basic capabilities to prevent the conflict. As a result, the potential for political violence continues, centered around specific events, including elections for a new General National Congress and appointment of a new government both anticipated as early as June. U.S. citizens should avoid areas of demonstrations and exercise caution if in the vicinity of any large gatherings, protests, or demonstrations, as even demonstrations intended to be peaceful can turn confrontational and escalate into violence. U.S. citizens traveling to or remaining in Libya, despite this travel warning, should use caution and limit non-essential travel within the country, make their own contingency emergency plans, and maintain security awareness at all times. As a precautionary move, the U.S. Defense Department has ordered the USS Bataan into the Mediterranean Sea with a complement of 1,000 Marines. The Bataan is an amphibious assault ship that carries hovercraft, helicopters, and can accommodate various types of aircraft. It's being reported that the Bataan's deployment to the Med is just in case the situation in Libya deteriorates to the point where it becomes necessary to evacuate U.S. citizens and personnel. Friends, in Luke chapter 21, Jesus tells us what signs to look for that will indicate where we are in Bible prophecy. In verse 8 he says, "Take heed that you are not deceived. For many will come in my name, saying, I am he, and the time has drawn near. Therefore do not go after them. But when you hear of wars and commotions, do not be terrified, for these things must come to pass first, but the end will not come immediately." Then he said to them, "Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And there will be great earthquakes in various places, and famines, and pestilences, and there will be fearful sights and great signs from heaven." Then in verse 25 he says, "And there will be signs in the sun, in the moon, and in the stars, and on the earth distress of nations, with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring, men's hearts failing them from fear and the expectation of those things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of heaven will be shaken." So what is actually taking place? Currently, there are many people claiming to be Christ. Some even say that we are all little gods in training, being deceived themselves and deceiving many. We are experiencing wars and rumors of wars, although it has been going on virtually since the time began. However, currently nation is rising against nation and kingdom against kingdom, and it appears to be getting worse by the day. Earthquakes have been on the increase, both in quantity and intensity. New and mysterious diseases, along with the reemergence of mutated strains of those thought to have been eradicated. Millions of people in danger of starvation, a significant portion of which is due to climate change and is only expected to get worse. Tens of millions of dead fish, sea and land mammals. The thinning of the ozone layer, which protects the Earth and us from solar radiation. Melting polar caps and rising sea levels due to climate change, as well as increased storm activity and the seas and the waves roaring. The list goes on, but Jesus said in verse 28, "Now when these things begin to happen, look up and lift up your heads, because your redemption draws near." And in 32, he tells us that, "Assuredly I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all these things are fulfilled." That is to say, the generation that sees all these things taking place will still be around when they reach their conclusion. We are living in the last days, and God has provided us with only one way to salvation, and that's through His Son, Jesus Christ. Are you saved? If you follow the link in the box below and pray the prayer of salvation with a sincere heart, you will be saved. May God bless you and yours.